Hi there, and welcome to the podcast Life as a show intently focused on exploring and unearthing the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. I would venture to say that there are a handful of idyllic romanticisms most people would tend to have. They include things like owning vineyards, sports franchises, retiring at 40, and so on. Oh, and how about this one? Owning your own picture-perfect island in paradise. Now, how many people have you met who've actually achieved anything remotely close to achieving such kinds of dreams? Not too many, right? Well, you're about to be treated to an episode in which our guest today has done something along those lines. In fact, what he and his team have done is a world's first. Think fantasy meeting a warm and ocean breezy reality. Marshall Mayer is the New York based founder and co chairman of IBG, or Island Buying Group Incorporated. He is a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis with a degree in history and Chinese. Mayer has more than 14 years of entrepreneurship, emerging markets business and finance experience, and has lived and worked in 5 countries on 3 continents and done business in over a dozen more. He was also founder and COO of a US and Philippines based nonprofit disaster response company specializing in typhoon resistant construction on remote islands. Mayer is a lifelong traveler and lover of new languages, of which he has studied 6. Now, all of that is impressive unto itself. However, this is where things get really interesting. Mayer is a co founder of Let's Buy an Island, a world's first project of its kind, which used crowdfunding to purchase an actual island. In 2019, a group of investors led by Marshall collectively put their funds together to make the $180,000 plus tax purchase of Coffee Key, a 1.2-acre uninhabited island off the coast of Belize. Aside from the crowdfunded purchase being unique, this project also represents an unusual nation building project too, with Coffee Key being reconstituted as the Principality of Islandia, complete with its own national flag, anthem, and government. In fact, through a small donation, you too can become an official citizen of Islandia. Now, while Coffee Key still remains under recognized laws, borders, and restrictions of Belize, unofficially to some, it has become the world's newest micronation. And to date, this venture and story has been covered and devoured by readers from major news outlets and publications, not limited to the likes of CNN, where I personally discovered this, New York Magazine, Lonely Planet, Mirror, and Telemundo, amongst others. So, with all that in mind, Marshall, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I can firmly say that you're the first head of state to join the program. So there's an honor right out of the gate.
No, the honor is all mine. It's a privilege for me to meet little people like yourself.
Coming with the fire, I like it.
Yep.
Alrighty, well, why don't we get right into it?
Yeah.
The first segment here is something called Coloring Wikipedia, and normally, I stress normally, what I do here is read off a definition of the profession of what the guest does, as defined by Wikipedia. But I do actually have another honor to bestow upon you, Marshall. You're the first person to render one of my segments completely useless. Unfortunately, Wikipedia does not have an entry for owning an island and all that entails. And actually, on the internet as well. I mean, I did a quick search, and yeah, unsurprisingly, there isn't a professional sort of background or template of all the duties and, again, responsibilities of owning an island. So with that in mind, I'm just going to lay this entire segment on you. But maybe you could explain a little bit more about what all of this means, and maybe I could lead off with this first question here. What are some of your chief roles at the moment concerning this venture?
Sure. So yeah, let's write the Wikipedia article right now.
Yeah.
And I think that island owner, island management, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's probably no article for it because there's no network of people doing what we're doing at the level that we're doing at it. And I think the key is at this level. I mean, I was watching a talk this morning that I was on a phone call with Richard Branson. I was watching him speak online this morning, and he said one of the most amazing sentences that I could have ever imagined coming out of any person's mouth, which is basically, he said, "I didn't know what a SPAC was until someone visited me on my island and suggested that I take Virgin Galactic public. And that was just a month or two before I went to space."
Wow.
Which was just a very Richard Branson kind of, there's not many people in the world that get to say that kind of thing. Right. And very few of us, you and me included, are not among that group of people, that elite group of people who get to, own these massive properties and have these huge mansions on these private islands with staff and the private helipad and all that stuff. And so, but there are a lot of islands out there, and it is actually doable. So I think most people who can afford this sort of thing, even if they are doing it on a relative budget, $1 million property instead of a $100 million property, they are doing it for private gain and or private enjoyment. They're not necessarily doing it for sort of mass appeal and mass marketing. There aren't many islands out there like that. I mean, they do exist for sure, and I've been to a number of them, but there aren't a lot out like that. So it's not surprising to me that it's a kind of empty category in Wikipedia. My roles in this venture is, we got this thing started about 4 years ago, and we started collecting interest and talking to people about sort of how we would get it done, and having them, throw some money in to help build this company. But in the end, it is a company, and we own this property with the idea of being able to turn it into a rental property that people can access and get to. As well as allowing our investors to live out that sort of private island fantasy that we would love to be able to afford, but may not be able to over the course of our life. Right. So, for me, a typical day is dealing with investors and questions, media questions. Trying to figure out what our next steps are on the island that we have in terms of building on it, what we're going to do with it, how we're going to design it. And then also figuring out what our next steps are for our next project, because you always got to be looking forward to the next thing. Yeah. So it's really a fun project to be involved in, and it takes up a good chunk of my day, but it's worth every minute.
Oh, I bet. I mean, it touches on a lot of different things. Again, I kind of alluded to this off the top. I mean, people have these dreams, right? These sort of like fantasies in a sense, and more or less, as you just stated, like you're kind of in a way trailblazing a way to make that a reality for some people, in some form or some capacity. And I'm sure that's, well, for one, it's been part of the reason it's generated so much buzz. When I again found this found your story basically on CNN, I think it'd been up there for a couple of weeks. I mean, right on the front page essentially. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to the level of interest for one, and some of the chords that it's striking as well. So it must be an exciting time for you. Busy, surely busy. I'm sure you're getting a lot of inquiries and being flooded with questions, but I'd imagine these are all great problems to be having at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly been busy, especially the last few weeks. And there are weeks or decades, I should say, where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And for us, this was a really busy time, and it resulted in us fully funding this first project and getting a lot of interest towards the next one. Mm-hmm. And all of these things are really, really exciting. I think the CNN article was really exciting, and not because it went viral, not because I got a push notification to my own phone from the CNN app with my face on it, which I thought
crazy
was
really
cool.
Yeah.
And totally weird. And I was getting a text from people I haven't heard from in years, saying, "Is this you?" But but at the same time, I think it was really exciting for a much nerdier reason, which is the day before, or maybe 2 days before our article came out, they discovered Ernest Shackleton's ship at the bottom of the Weddell Sea in Antarctica. Yeah. And that was front page of CNN Travel for a day or two before our article came in, and bumped them off the front page, which I was both very proud of and also a little ashamed, because I really respect the whole story behind Ernest Shackleton and the endurance and its survival and their survival and all the pictures and videos of exploring this. I just think it's so cool. Not only do I think it's cool, but just a few months ago, before that came out, 2 months before that came out, my fiance and I went down to Antarctica, and we were in the Ross Sea. We were talking about the fact that nobody had discovered Ernest Shackleton's ship, but it wasn't too far from here. And then they discover it, and then everybody drops that and comes and talks to us. And those poor guys, they lost out, and I feel bad about it, to be honest. I'm not thrilled about that part.
That is a story. That is a story. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I do have one other quick question, really quickly, while we're in this segment here. We spoke a little bit about like some of the fun things, some of the exciting things about, the day to day, essentially. Is there anything on like the side where it has been a bit of a challenge, stressful moments, perhaps?
Sure. I mean, look, over the course of the last few years, there's been a number of challenges. Initially it was getting people on board with the idea itself, and not just the idea of the dream of let's buy an island, but also the fact that we were doing something that I've seen a lot of other groups that are trying to either crowdfund or just raise money, period.
Yeah.
From 5 or 6 friends, that have done something very different, where they look at a property and they say, I want this property, I'm going to buy this property, and it costs this much money, and this is what we're going to do on it. And there's a problem with that fundamentally, because a property is individual, it's unique. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get that property at that price. There's no guarantee it will still be there when you have the money. Even if you get an option on it, there's still a way for the owner to get out. There is a certain amount of uncertainty to telling people you're going to do something in a place and what you're going to do, until you actually own that place. And so what we did early on is we said, we're not going to buy this island, this place. We're going to buy an island someplace. And we did some research. We knew that there are islands, where you're from in Canada, the Great White North, that has, islands in a river or, in a lake that's frozen for 3/4 of the year, and you can get it for $20,000, $30,000. I mean, they exist, they're out there.
Yeah.
And for us, it started with just that dream of we're going to buy an island, but we knew that if we could get, $50K or so, we could get something, maybe a rock in the middle of the ocean, but we could get something. And then it became, okay, well, let's look at what's actually feasible. What are the ranges we need? Do we need at least 100K to do this, at least 150 to do this, et cetera, and then finding this property. So that was really tough too, because you're talking to potential investors who need to wrap their head around the fact that they don't know where it is yet. Right.
And what it represents, essentially. Right. Yeah.
Right. And then you buy the island, right? We voted on it. We made an offer based on investor support, and our offer was fortunately accepted, which I think was really great. And we went to go close. Closing happened. Everyone was really excited. We got a bunch of new investors because people said, oh, this is awesome. Now I know where it is. I can wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened to us that happened to everyone. COVID came, and suddenly Belize shut its borders. So many other countries shut their borders, and international travel became really, really, really difficult. Yep. So we found ourselves dealing with that same struggle. The only difference is that we didn't have, unlike a lot of hotels and things like that, we didn't have a lot of ongoing costs because we hadn't built on it yet. So we were actually a little lucky in that sense.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But as far as being able to raise more money, I mean, nobody was interested, right? Everyone was sitting at home, waiting. We sold a share here, a share there, whatever it was. But it took us a while. So then fast forward, and we're coming out of sort of the COVID world, and now we're dealing with other issues. We're dealing with issues of going in to get permits and get approvals for all these different things. And then we're also dealing with, and you touched a little bit on it in your introduction, we're also dealing with this marketing concept that we've thrown out of this micronation, right?
Yeah.
And that's on one hand a really fun, super fun, awesome project that we're working on the side. I think that if you read the CNN article and you read any of the numerous articles that sort of regurgitated that article or contacted us directly and interviewed and published on their own, they all make sure to quote me or someone else who has said very clearly, we know where we are, we know we're in Belize, we respect Belize, we're part of the culture, we want to contribute to it. But that doesn't stop them from making the headline, 2 friends buy an island to start their own country. And, I get it. It gets clicks.
Yeah.
It also annoys people in Belize a little bit.
I bet. Yeah.
and so when I first sat down, you said to me, this is the first time you've been able to speak to a head of state.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I have to say, I was surprised when the Prime Minister of Belize was asked about our project in a press conference.
Really?
And his response was something, because it was a leading question. I totally get why he responded the way he did. But they asked him this very leading question of like, what do you think about these 2 people trying to secede from Belize or something like that?
Yeah.
Which we're not doing, for the record.
Right.
And he said, well, they're stupid if they think they're going to do that. So I have to say that I have now been insulted by a head of state. I personally am not insulted, but I do actually take it as a point of pride that I got insulted by a head of state.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's the best way of taking it. Yeah, most definitely.
And like, there's nothing that they're going to do because we thought we've broken no laws. There's nothing, and we've been very careful about that. We look forward to years and years of being a contributing member to Belizean society and not the other way around. But I did find it to be an interesting time. And that was sort of a moment where I thought, oh, right, we really didn't consider what would happen if the entire world was talking about our project simultaneously.
Yeah.
And how Belize might react to them being in the news in this way, as opposed to for all the other things Belize has to offer, its natural beauty and the people that are so nice, and fresh fish and and just gorgeous landscapes and the crystal clear waters and the diving. I mean, I could go on. The list is pretty long.
Yeah.
The ruins, the animals, the rainforest. so that's been challenging to a point. And then of course you got your online trolls and other things. But I think that's all part of where we are now, which is that building aspect, and that's the next challenge.
One quick question. Yeah. One quick question really quickly. When you did purchase the island, was it privately held at that time, or was it like held by the government basically?
It was privately held. Yeah.
Okay.
We purchased it from an older couple who had bought it as an investment about 15 years ago.
Okay.
It was a Lebanese guy and his Belizean wife, and they they own a number of properties around Belize that they had sort of invested in, and so it was just one of them that they were trying to unload. But it was, I mean, it's such a beautiful property, and Belize has 350, I think, privately owned islands off its coast, and most of them are swamps or mangroves, and a handful have been developed, and most of those are in private ownership situations. Yeah. Very few of them, or a handful of them, are parceled out. So, because if they're large enough, you can sell it to multiple families. Okay. But as far as private islands goes, I mean, there's a bunch out there, but only a handful are developed and available for rental as well.
Okay, I gotcha.
We're open to
yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. Why don't we skip on over into a new segment here, something we can continue this just back and forth, essentially. It's a Q&A discovery, and I just have some questions I'll just fire off at you. And the first one, maybe you've spoken to this point already to a certain degree, but I'd be curious to know a little bit more about the backstory of why, what was the motivation to do all of this in the first place?
Haven't you always wanted to own an island?
Of course, right?
So have I.
All right, next question.
I didn't outgrow it, and neither did my partners on this project.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. We've always wanted to own an island, and it sounded like fun. And it started originally, honestly, just to give you the long story short, it started originally with my partner Gareth, who met somebody years and years ago who had an island that he was trying to sell. Yeah. And Gareth didn't do anything with it at the time, but he thought to reserve the URL letsbuyAnisland.com. And for 10 years, he paid for letsbuyAnisland.com without ever doing anything with it. Right. And then we saw another island for sale actually in the Philippines, and we thought, and he called me up, we were chatting, and he said, yeah, how much could it possibly cost? If we can't get this one, which was like $350K or something like that, maybe we'll get something else and we'll see what happens. Wouldn't that be great? And we went from there. So we started reaching out to people and seeing if anyone would be interested, and throwing in a few $1,000s each, and and the rest is
It's
history.
history. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. It's so cool. I can see why. I mean, the story's caught on. There's so many different angles that are just so fascinating. I think it's just so much fun to hear. I mean, really, we're just starting this talk here, and I'm already just thoroughly enjoying everything that I'm hearing. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that as well.
Chris.
Maybe you could fill us in a little bit more on some of the, I don't know, the basics surrounding the island itself. I mean, presently, does it have any infrastructure built on it, or plans to do so? I mean, you mentioned that eventually, having the investors come out there, or even as a rental property, I'd imagine you're probably going to have some stuff there, but maybe you could update us where it's at presently.
Sure. Well, as of 2 weeks ago, we have an outhouse. It was constructed in the back of the island for people to use while we don't have infrastructure. It's been labeled the Islandian thinking box, and it is available for public use. However, long term, that's obviously that's not the end goal. So the island, when people ask me how big it is,
Yeah.
I've got three answers for you, and all of them are correct. There is the amount of land that is currently above water and visible as an island.
Yeah.
There is the titled amount of land, because it has been drawn out on a map in the government offices. And then there is the island land plus a setback, which under Belizean law, you can build with permits and other things, you can build out an additional setback. And I think it's 66 feet in every direction, or about 30 yards.
Yeah.
And that is intended to be both for erosion control from your own property. Also, all the land that touches the water in Belize is technically open to the public, because the government doesn't want there to be any issues of trespassing or other sorts of problems if a boat needs to dock in a storm or something like that. Is that you can land anywhere and be within the confines of the law. So, but that's only related to the first 66 feet from the water. So it allows you to dock if you need to, whatever. So you can build out that setback, and that way you can then, again, in theory, not that we're going to do this, but in theory, you can then fence off your own property and say, no, nobody comes in here because this is my property. You want to stay out on the beach, that's fine. Yeah. Right. So that's sort of the third option, which is adding an area to the island such whereby we cannot build on anything, but we can use that land for non-permanent structures and obviously to enjoy. And if you own everything between it and there's water on the other side, it's effectively yours too. Yeah. So, and we would obviously pay for that, to go out. So the three answers for you are: there's about an acre, 1.2 acres above water right now. The titled amount of land that we have is 1.51 acres. Okay. And then the total estimated amount that we could build out to would be about 3 acres or 1.2 hectares. So that's sort of the long-term goal. If we can do that in a sustainable way, we would love to sort of build out the island a little further, make it a little bit more sort of welcoming and a little larger and more comfortable for our guests.
So like permanent structure.
Yeah. And then as far as permanent infrastructure goes, that's the next step. So I know we're recording this, of course, and so if you see behind me in my background, you see those stakes kind of over this shoulder and over this shoulder. Yeah. Those wrap around the north part of the island, and that kind of roughly represents our property line that's eroded a little bit. Yeah. And that's just because this side of the island doesn't have any mangroves, so it doesn't protect against erosion. So we're going to be putting up a seawall kind of right along that line, more or less. And then that whole area between those stakes and where the land starts is going to be sand. And that's all going to be filled in. That'll be our beach. Okay. So we're going in for permits shortly, and we expect to have the beach built out in the next several months. While that's happening, we're going in for permits again for actual construction, and we're working with local engineers in Belize and consulting with and potentially working with other builders outside of Belize, but also builders in Belize to help put together the actual construction, which is intended to be a probably 4 to 6 bedroom, bed and breakfast type thing. Okay. Gotcha. And that'll be on the mainland. And then over time, we may add, sort of a bungalow over the water and all that stuff. But that'll be added over time. And then obviously a dock. So between sort of all of that, that's going to be the basic infrastructure, and the whole thing is going to be built off grid. For us, sustainability is a big part of this. We're going to solar power as much as we possibly can.
Cool.
We have a really consistent wind coming out of the east, so I'd love to have a good a wind power kind of solution, especially for the evenings. And we would love to have, everything from electric stoves to an electric engine for our boat, eventually. So we're gonna work towards that, and we are fully funded for it, which is great. So what we have now should be enough. We're going to be launching a Kickstarter soon, actually, to try to supplement some of our funds, and it's really just a matter of the more we raise, the more we can do, but we have enough to build as it stands right now. So yeah, that's sort of the next step is for what we do next. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's exciting. It all sounds exciting. And a couple of things that stood out too, like what you were just sharing there. Like, for one, I mean, just again, everything that you're doing just sounds, again, really quite exciting. But then also too, what kind of encourages me in hearing this. I mean, for one, like, this dream again of owning an island, and it's just fun. There's a lot of fun, and it fulfills a lot of different sort of dreams for people. And again, like that idyllic sort of one of just having your own place, right? But also too, on the other hand too, what, again, returning to this point of like what excites me about this is that, like, your plans of what you just explained there, building in sustainability to it all. It's not just a selfish endeavor where, like, I want this island for me, for my personal satisfaction, for my enjoyment. And to a degree, probably, some of those things might be in there for, yourself or even investors. But also this element of, how can we do this the right way, the responsible way of, solar power, wind power, not putting too much stress on the environment itself by doing this. And I think it's stories like these that really encourage me about things moving forward. I mean, there's enough doom and gloom on that issue, on climate crisis and everything else, but these types of stories, sort of illustrate that there are ways that we can sort of still move forward in a number of different capacities, but do it in a responsible manner. So yeah, I'm really thankful that you did share that point in particular on this program. I don't know, I've had like a few climate tech professionals on the last little while. I'm in talks with a few more, so maybe it's top of mind awareness right now is where I'm thinking. But yeah, you just triggered a few different thoughts and ideas when you shared that. So yeah, thanks again. It's really okay. I want to do, I would like to move on to another question here. And this one is a fun one, I think, at least I think. On your website, letsbuyanaisland.com, I mean, there is plenty of tongue in cheek there. And I just want to read this off for some of the listeners right now. There's a section there. It says key facts about the Principality of Islandia. Provisional Head of State of Islandia, His Royal Highness HRH, Prince Regent Marshal Mayer. Proclamation of the Principality of Islandia, February 11th, 2018, the National Day. Head of Government of the Principality of Islandia, the Right Honorable Prime Minister Jody Hill. So a lot of fun there, and just super fun to go through the site itself. But on the other hand as well, though, there is information relating to, the fact that you have when I was researching over 100 investors, possibly more by now, and funds committed, over $400,000. And again, this could have probably, or may have increased since you're researching this. So to me, like, facts like this firmly indicate that this venture is anything, but just a joke, or a stunt. But I'd love to hear more about some of the long-term goals of, what this means to you, formally or informally, and to what degree is this, fun sort of tongue-in-cheek element there, and, the more serious side of it. You comment on that a little bit if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, your facts are spot on. We've raised about 450,000 so far. We have another 50 or so on its way in. And we'll see what the Kickstarter kicks up. Look, in the end, it's a business, and that's really what my main focus is. I intend to do everything I can to make some profit, be able to return some value for our shareholders, and simultaneously providing for sort of the lifestyle aspect of it that a lot of people have invested for. As far as the micronation aspect goes, it's something that, those of us who put this together are dedicated travelers and world travelers, and we love micronations. It's a quirky, weird sort of part of some countries, actually many countries, more than you would think. Micronations are kind of all over the place, and they exist in this tongue-in-cheek kind of limbo state, with one exception being Sealand, which we could totally do a whole separate story on, where they basically have accidentally stumbled on recognition from two countries, from two actual countries. Really? And the whole Sealand thing is great. And I actually am proud to say that the Islandian flag is flying on Sealand. We are in very good relations with that particular nation, and they have recognized us, so that's important. Okay. If no one else. However, so micronations are a fun tongue-in-cheek thing. Yeah. And there's, sort of in the class of nations worldwide, you've got your sort of UN or well, I was going to say UN recognized nations, but there's a handful out there that I think we all consider nations that are not necessarily UN recognized, like Taiwan or, right. But there's countries that sort of function as a legitimate nation state. They have a permanent population. It's, tens of thousands of people at least. It's a decent sized chunk of land. I mean, even Vatican City is like 40, 50 acres or something like that. There's a generally accepted definition for nation that's out there. And then you have sort of your sub areas where there's sort of, operating autonomously on their own within a larger nation. And so there's the, Transnistria in Moldova. There's, for better or for worse, the Donbass, region in Ukraine. Yeah. There's an interesting region called the Jewish Autonomous Zone, or Jewish Autonomous Region, in Far East Russia, which was part of, it's actually really interesting. And I don't know how autonomous they still are, but they were set up as sort of a not so final solution from Stalin's perspective of shipping all the Jews out to the east to get rid of them as a problem, and then living in their own. There's still like 2,000 Jews or something living out there. Really? It's really, I've never heard of this. Yeah, it's a really interesting history. Half of Uzbekistan is autonomous and kind of self-governing. So there's got these sorts of regions. Then you have areas that like try to break away every couple of years, and and so you get your Catalonia in Spain, you get Quebec and in Canada, and any number of other places. And then sort of as you work your way down that list, you end up at micronations, which is like half the time it's a guy's backyard who just decides he doesn't want it to be part of the US anymore. And, there's a guy in Nevada who has a micronation where it's like him and his neighbors, and they've banded together and called it a micronation. He takes pictures of himself in this like dictator's uniform, like military garb.
Somehow this doesn't surprise me all that much, but yeah.
Of course not. He's in the desert, and he has a monument to his naval heroes, of their country.
I've got a mental image of what this person looks like.
Yeah, you know exactly what he looks like, because what you're picturing is him. And I want to say it's called like Moravia or something like that. And he even has a currency which is pegged to the US dollar, kind of, because what it really is the value of one Moravian dollar, whatever it's called, is equivalent to the USD value of 1/3 of a tube of Pillsbury dough. Right, so this is the side we're on. And we're enjoying that side of things. Your more legitimate micronations, we would love to be like Christiania or Ujapis, which is a neighborhood in Copenhagen and Vilnius, respectively. And they're basically artist neighborhoods that, and they're right in the middle of the capitals, and people come as a destination and they go and check it out. We would love to be a destination that people want to come check out. We would love to be a destination that people can sort of say to themselves like, oh, checked off another country, haha, and really just make it a fun place to be. We are not going to be declaring independence from Belize or raising an army or anything like that.
Well, I think you're on their radar already. They're probably
we're totally on their radar. And we'll have, we'll have our own rules, we'll have our own little constitution, but our constitution is things like everybody's got a right to celebrate their birthday, or not. That's also your right. And things like that, and which I full disclosure, I stole that from the Ujapis Constitution. I think it's a fantastic one. And they also said everybody has a right to be happy and everybody has a right to be unhappy. So, there's that side of things is for fun. But yeah, we do take the business very seriously, and we plan on being open to the public by the end of the year. We plan on renting out to people for for vacation. We can rent out the whole island for, events, weddings, bachelor parties, whatever you want. We'll have a small restaurant, a small bar, and we'd like to be a stopping off point for people going diving, and maybe a place that people can dive from. So there's a lot of stuff that we want to do with it, and there's a lot of potential there as a just unbelievably beautiful destination that's really, really accessible. It's less than an hour from the airport in Belize City. So I've left from New York, where I live, at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I've still get on an early plane, and I'm on the island by lunchtime.
Wow.
It's really great.
Yeah. I mean, I've got another question here, and this is something that I ask oftentimes to a number of guests, and it relates to like these pinch me moments where it's like, is there anything that stands out that, just you cannot believe that you're part of this? But the way you're describing it to me, and I don't mean to downplay the stressful elements, because I'm sure there are some, and you even touched upon some of them earlier, but I mean, this whole project to me strikes me as a pinch me moment. Like, am I onto something here? Is that a correct assessment, or what would you say?
Every day for the last month or so, since this we were kind of in this limbo stage until just a month ago of we had the island, it was paid off, we had paid all our taxes, we were good. And now we were raising money to build, but we had 20-30K in the bank. It wasn't enough to build. It wasn't enough, it was enough, but it was something, we were building slowly towards the goal. And now we're kind of in this moment where we have the buying power, we have the cash, we've got the support, we've got the media. Only thing we have to do is just not drop the ball. And that's a lot of pressure.
That's where the stress comes in.
Yeah, but there is a pinch me moment for sure, that and that happens when you are standing on the island too, is that kind of moment where you realize, like, oh right, this is ours, we bought this, like, we're gonna do stuff with this is going to be really, really cool. And for the foreseeable future, myself or any of my fellow investors will be able to A, tell their friends, I own an island, but B, decide one weekend, like, hey, let's go down to the island this weekend, like, let's write them an email, see if there's an open space, we'd love to go down. And even if there isn't, even if all the rooms are taken, and and whatever, it's open for people to come visit. So, investors being able to come down and get that VIP treatment, and sit at the restaurant and enjoy the fruits of their investment. Or the
coconut story of it all too, I think is part of the thrilling element, dropping that into a conversation. Let's just head off to the island this weekend. Where's that out? Oh, that's just off the coast of Belize, Islandia. You haven't heard of it?
Did you have a good weekend? Yeah, I did. It was a bit rainy on the island.
On my island.
On my island.
I got to do something about that. I really got to do something about that.
Actually, you know what the real problem is when I talk to friends now and I'm complaining about something, they go, "You can't complain. You own an island." Oh, right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Alrighty. Yeah. It sounds, as I said, I've used the word exciting a number of times, and it just keeps popping up in my head when we're chatting about this. But maybe on a more serious note, and I'd be remiss to not bring up this side. First, I will acknowledge that you yourself do have this international background, specializing in typhoon resistant construction on remote islands. Clearly, you're well read and knowledgeable on disaster preparedness, and then ostensibly, climate related issues. So what's your take on all of this? I mean, climate issues, rising sea levels. I'm sure you get asked these types of questions all the time. I'm sure you also had it built into your SWOT analysis when you're analyzing this investment. So maybe you could speak to that point.
Sure. So, I'll give you my answer. I tell everybody, where, as a citizen of the world, I'm of course concerned about climate change, and it bothers me. And I was down in Antarctica just a couple of months ago and seeing firsthand the effects of climate change. And if there's one thing that I could change about the world, that's high up on the list. And it's mind-boggling the way it's affecting people, and will affect people for years to come. However, as a business owner, I'm less concerned, and the reason for that is not to say that I'm going to ignore obviously the climate thing. We've talked about the fact that we want to be sustainable and green, and by in no way sort of negatively impact the climate. In fact, the opposite. We can talk a little bit about what we want to do to positively impact the climate while we're there. But I'm less concerned about the overarching climate change issue because even in the worst case projections in the world, we're looking at a foot or so of sea level rise in the next 80 or so years, right? Okay. And that can be disastrous across ecosystems, not on our tiny little island. I mean, we're pretty low to the water, but 30, 40 grand and you can raise the whole island up by a foot, wow. Pretty easily. Wow. Because what you basically do is you bring in, a couple barges worth of, dirt and just pile it and pack it down and that's it. Now I don't want to spend that money, obviously, but there's
from a business perspective, there are options. Right?
So in terms of living with it, there are options. There is there's a part of me that, has been thinking this whole time about how to build in a hurricane resistant way, in a surge resistant way, flood resistant way. And the floods are easy. You build on stilts, so at least you cover yourself from some floods. Yeah. Storms are doable as well, and they're actually made easier to withstand storms if you're also on stilts because it allows air to go under the house as well as over. And then just then it's just a matter of sort of the curvature of your roof and the way things are shaped and how it allows air through through your home in a storm and other things. So that's all part of the plan. Yeah. But Belize happens to sit outside of most major hurricanes' path. They get hit by a handful of storms each year, but it's kind of the edge of the hurricane. If anything, it's kind of like the storm system that kind of follows or trails on the side. It's not in the direct path of most hurricanes. As a country, they've only been hit directly by 2 major hurricanes in the last 100 years.
There you go.
So that's nice. Yeah. We also sit behind the Belize Barrier Reef, so we don't get major waves or swells. It's pretty much, it's like being on the Long Island Sound or a lake or whatever it is. I mean, it's very calm where we are. And so as far as water levels go, the tides don't rise or fall that much during the day, and we don't get big waves. If there were a tsunami that were headed towards Belize, I mean, I'm no tsunami expert, but my understanding is that a lot of the tsunami, if not all the tsunami, would be dissipated by the reef. I mean, that's sort of its whole job as a breaker. So I'm less concerned on my side. And we also happen to sit 10 minutes from Belize City. So if there is a tsunami warning, we're evacuating everybody and going right to shore. Yeah. So I'm not super concerned.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, in getting to know you a little bit more, again, researching for this, I was expecting you to have obviously like prepared answers for something like this and for your investors. So it doesn't surprise me at all to hear this, but it is interesting nonetheless to hear the actual explanations for it, because they all are based on sound logic and reasoning and, a lot of planning, smart planning and strategic planning essentially. So yeah.
And it's hard because, I get emails sometimes where someone will, just trolling me will send me an email and say, why would I invest in an island that's just going to be gone in 5 years? And it's like, okay, I've actually read the studies that because again, when for the same reason that we have a nice nuanced business plan that we're talking about what we're going to do, and then the media publishes 2 friends buy an island to start their own country, you also have studies that say, where the title is effects of climate change over the course of a long period of time. It's like this really long, dry title. And buried in there is one conclusion that says, if nothing is done, we'll see a foot of sea level rise over the next 100 years. And then the headline is, 30% of the world's landmass or world's beaches are going to be devoured this century. And you're like, wait, what? like you went from like this really dry kind of like title that wouldn't attract anybody to one line that is a little bit scary to like, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm denying, I mean, I'm not denying climate change or anything like that. I'm not, I
don't get the impression at all.
On board. Yeah, I know. But some people are like, oh, so you're not worried. You must not care. Like, I totally care. And at the same time, we're running a business and I'm in my 30s. If we have a foot of sea level rise in 80 years, I'm going to be 110 years old. I'm really hoping I'm not running this thing by then. So I'm going to make sure that when we pass it off, we haven't done anything to hurt the environment. And I'm not, this is not like a pass the problem on to our children kind of thing, but I'm certainly going to want to pass this business off to the children at some point, then, long before this is an issue for us.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. No, thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Yeah, I think it was really worthwhile to hear that side of things as well, because I'm sure a lot of people, again, have those questions. And I think the way that you just answered it, answers a lot of those questions for people. So, yeah. I do want to shift into a new segment here, something
Mhm.
called a water cooler story. And essentially, it is as it sounds. I just ask guests to indulge listeners with a story related, to what they're doing. So, yeah, I'm eager to hear what you've got for us, Marshall.
Sure. So I'll tell you, I live on an island with 3.5 million other people, and we call it Manhattan. And we often don't appreciate that, that we have that, that we're surrounded by water on all sides, that we have this sort of beautiful rivers and sites, and every once in a while I'm sitting on in my office, or on the water, and just sort of looking out over, just beautiful views, just really, really incredible views. If you
Yeah.
take out all the buildings and stuff and you see what's out there. But then I saw this map recently that was of Manhattan before we had sort of conquered it. And it was, there were rivers running through the island. There were hills. There were, there was so much more going on in Manhattan than ever before. And yet today there's not even a wolf. They're native to Manhattan, but there's not a single one. I think once, like 20 years ago or something, a wolf in the middle of the night on a slow traffic night wandered across a bridge and ended up in Manhattan. It was front page news, obviously, a wolf in the city. But we've conquered nature, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
No.
And so that's sort of what drove me to want to be kind of a part of this project, is in addition to the childhood dream, is because, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing either to have conquered nature in its own way. The world is in its natural form is not designed to be hospitable to us. And we're the only species on Earth that bends the world to its will, which I think is in some ways very cool and exciting, but in other ways obviously detrimental. And I don't believe, we were talking about climate change. I don't believe in the idea of save the planet, because I don't think it's really about save the planet. The planet's going to be just fine. It'll survive us. We'll kill ourselves off, and the planet will just rejuvenate and rebuild and be good. Right? Save humans, totally. Right? Save us and the animals we're killing off in the process. But the idea of save the planet is kind of silly too, because the planet is not really hurting by this, by any of this. It's affecting us first. So anyways, that's kind of why I wanted to get involved in this project, and to see if there's a better way to do this stuff. And so, just it's it's something that I've wanted to be involved in its own way, and I couldn't put my finger on it for years. And so you mentioned that I was in the Philippines for a while. I was working in disaster response, and I left that because I found myself becoming a professional beggar. I was raising money pretty much nonstop, and it was not money that people were ever going to see a return on. It's a donation, it's a charity, and that's great. I mean, if you can raise them. I just started a charity for Ukraine, and I love doing it, and I'm happy to sort of provide funds and be there to support great projects. But I would rather be a person with a good chunk of change in my bank account to support great projects than to be sitting on the side, in the trenches, sort of doing everything and begging for $10 from friends and $100 from these people, and this $1,000 grant and whatever, which is exhausting, really exhausting. And there have to be sort of better for-profit ways, because that's how you get people motivated, for-profit ways to solve a lot of these issues. And that's what I've always sort of wanted to be involved in. And it's taken a long time to get to that point where, I get to be involved in this project and a few others as well, that are looking at sustainability as sort of a key focus, but also looking at it from a for-profit point of view, because if you can make sustainability profitable, then you make sustainability sexy to everybody. And that I think was has what created that drive in me. And it's just, I think it's good luck and manifestation to some extent, that I've been able to sort of find this niche and push forward with it. So, and I used to joke, it's harder to get your friend to give you $10 they're never going to see again than it is to get a stranger to give you $5,000 that they want to return on. Right. And that's true, because I've begged some of the same friends for $10 10 years ago that gave me the $10 after fighting, who are now knocking down my door saying, I want to invest $5,000 with you.
Crazy.
And I'm literally like, this is the difference here. I mean, it's palpable. And we can, in theory, provide the same kind of services in this business than we could as a nonprofit in the Philippines. And I'd love to do another island in the Philippines as well. Because the impact that we provided then was housing people, job training, carpentry. It was focused on the teach a man to fish, and not just to give a man a fish model. And we were doing marine restoration. We were doing rebuilding schools. We were doing a lot of fun things, educational programs, and we can do all that here too. We can bring groups down who will pay to be on this beautiful island, who will help us with marine restoration projects. We can bring down groups who want to learn about marine restoration and want to learn about marine life, and have them come down and put a portion of those funds towards these cool projects. We can do educational programs with Belizean kids and sort of work with them about, learning about how to protect their own environment. And we can do coral rehabilitation, which creates or creates homes for fish and for new fish life. And basically, one of these domes, which is, $25-$30 to make, $50 to deploy, can produce up to 100 pounds of fish a year. You're talking about domes that are, out of concrete and limestone that are, 3 feet wide, 4 feet wide, and, drop them in the ocean, just let them sit there, and they become a place that you can go dive, you can go check out, you can make money on, because you can sell it as a diving destination. But you can also then produce 100 pounds of fish per year per dome. And that, at the market rate, is basically pays itself off in 1 year for fishermen and boats. So you can find, I think it's a passion of mine that I've has laid dormant for a long time, to be able to find a for-profit way to bring what a nonprofit might bring to to a community.
Have the same level of impact, or even greater, perhaps even.
And I think greater, because that means we're hiring local staff, we're putting money back into the community, and we're doing it in a way that doesn't take away from other businesses that are out there, a lot of, or take away labor from other businesses, whatever. We're creating jobs and creating, opportunity, and anybody can benefit. Any Belizean would be able, if we were able to, get involved in marine restoration, for example, which I would love to do. Any Belizean would be able to come onto the water and fish, and they might catch a fish that we helped make. I don't know how to say that. Helped grow, helped that we helped their parents meet. So we can be a part of that and be a positive contributing member to society, which I think is just incredible. And anyway, that for me, that's the big drive. And it's something that's really been a big part of it for me.
Yeah, well said. I'd like to continue that thought, actually, right into the next segment here. It's a crystal ball segment. Name implies, looking to the future, trends, predictions, so on and so forth. And, again, this whole project and researching it and listening to you speak about it today, I mean, there's so many different elements that hit me, different angles, notions of creativity, fun, innovation, but also too, there's this other side of these shrewd sort of strategic planning, things that you were just speaking to just a second ago. And this might be a nice last question to lead off with here, or to end with rather, is that ultimately, what do you see this project representing? If you could kind of encapsulate all of this, it might be a challenging question to answer, or maybe it's really simple. I don't know. I'd love to hear what you've got to say on that point.
You see it representing.
Yeah, all of this. I mean, we've spoken on notions of sustainability. We've spoken on notions of fulfilling dreams, giving back essentially to communities. I mean, there's so many different elements to it. And I don't know. I mean, if what in your mind could this whole, if you bring it all together, what does it represent?
Right. I think it represents an opportunity to prove a number of concepts. One is the crowdfunding model, and can you build this, this kind of boutique resort, make it successful, and that's all well and good. But if that's successful, it also means that we have a successful sustainability model. We have a
It
successful model
validates it. Yeah.
and we have a successful model for being a contributing member to a community, instead of and introducing people to the community. We want people to come visit us and then go visit Belize,
Yeah.
or the rest of Belize.
Yeah.
We want people to be a part of the community. We want Belizeans coming out to our restaurant and our bar, and in their boats, and just come and hang out and chill with us.
Yeah.
We want that to happen, because we want to be a part of the community, and we don't want to be like the all-inclusives, in Tulum or wherever it is,
Right.
that sort of keep people out, and it's like,
Yeah.
you're a guest or you're not, you come in here or not,
Right.
and come to our private beach. It's like, I want it to be a place where people are feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, then you've got a sustainability model, you've got a good for-profit model, a boutique hotel model, you've got a contributing member of the community model.
Yeah.
And I think all of those would be really great, and we would love to be able to replicate it, not just with islands, but with other properties, and vineyards, breweries, I don't know, ski resorts, decrepit towns that need revamping, you name it. Like, I'd love to be able to sort of bring that model to other really cool places around the world.
Absolutely fascinating. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Marshall.
Yeah, of course.
One final question here. I mean, I'm sure this is going to generate, a lot of interest, additional interest, or hopefully it will, at least for you. But I mean, are there still investment options available to those who maybe are hearing this for the first time and would like to learn more?
Yeah, so we're actually looking to launch a new fund very soon. So I would encourage anybody to go on our website, letsbuyAnisland.com, and they can reach out to us. There's a contact page, there's a join us page, and you can just reach out there and say, hey, I'd be interested in this or any other investment opportunity. You can also email me directly, Marshall at letsbuyAnisland.com, and or follow us on Instagram at Let's Buy an Island.
Cool.
Or Twitter at Let's Buy an Island, or Facebook at Let's Buy an Island. It's a we've got a full monopoly on the name there. So that's just keep an eye out on those things, and we'll be posting as soon as we're able to about what's going on and what the next project is. And we would love for people to get involved, because we really do want to be there for the community. Not just community in Belize, but the community of our supporters and our sort of citizens and lords and whatever, and for the worldwide travel community as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for sharing everything that you did. I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I've really, really enjoyed the whole conversation. And I'm certainly not just saying that. It has been fun right out of the gate, right until the end. So yeah, thanks for sharing again all those insights. And I encourage everyone to certainly go check out what this is all about. Dig into it. Yeah. Any final comments?
No, I think that's it. I'm sorry. I would go get it, but there's a phone ringing in the background. It's a landline. You may have heard of those. No final comments. I think.
Okay.
I think it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, thank you, Chris, for taking the time and for inviting me on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Alrighty, thanks. All right. Well, for those interested in learning more about, Let's Buy an Island, please go on over to the website, as Marshall just said. Check them out on all the social platforms, of which all will be included in the show notes, so you can, have a look there. Also, too, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts, and head on over to Life as the YouTube channel. We will have a full video episode over there, and also, too, we'll probably have some pictures of the island itself. A visual overlay during the intro, so you'll be able to have a good look at what it's all about. And then finally, too, please don't forget to join us on the next episode of Life as where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Until next time, stay curious about life and living.